Dr. Lisa Hayes made the discovery that changed everything when she detected signals from the Forbidden Realm. This was the dimension that Zephyrian scientists had detected, but never dared to explore because their probes had never returned. Lisa realized that the Forbidden Realm was not dangerous, but was simply beyond the reach of any species that relied on technology rather than consciousness. Captain Jake Morrison assembled a joint task force that included the most awakened humans on Earth. Lieutenant Amy Foster and Sergeant Dan Cooper had been transformed by their experiences in Zephyrian laboratories, while newcomer Maria Gonzalez had developed abilities that surpassed even the most advanced human volunteers. The Forbidden Realm existed at the source level of reality, where thoughts became physical matter without any intermediate steps. Maria Gonzalez was the first human to successfully navigate this dimension because her consciousness had evolved beyond the need for a physical anchor point in normal space. Amy Foster discovered that the Forbidden Realm contained the original gate builders who had been waiting millions of years for another species capable of transcending material limitations. These beings of pure consciousness had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations while hoping that someone would eventually join them. High Commander Vextar made a final, desperate decision to launch every ship in the Zephyrian fleet against Earth. The Empire faced complete collapse if humanity was allowed to fully master consciousness-based technology. It was better to destroy everything than to accept defeat from creatures the Zephyrians considered primitives. The massive Zephyrian assault involved opening multiple gates simultaneously to pour the entire Imperial fleet through dimensional space. Thousands of warships emerged from portals above every major city on Earth, while ground forces prepared to occupy the planet through overwhelming force. But humanity was ready for this final battle. Store clerk Ashley Ward had evolved into a coordinator of interdimensional commerce, while construction worker Greg Taylor had become an architect of impossible realities. Teacher Helen Blake could educate entire populations instantly, while mechanic Paul Johnson could repair or create any technology through pure intention. The climax began when humans stopped defending Earth and instead followed the Zephyrians back through their own gates. Using the Forbidden Realm as a staging area, human consciousness appeared simultaneously across all 12 worlds of the Zephyrian Empire. They came not as conquerors, but as liberators. Retired veteran Frank Morris led liberation forces that existed in multiple dimensions at once. His armies were composed of human imagination made manifest, and they fought not to destroy, but to free the enslaved species that had served the Zephyrian Empire for thousands of years. Judge Carol Wright established courts of justice on every Zephyrian world where the crimes of the Empire were judged by representatives of all the species that had suffered under alien rule. Her interdimensional legal system ensured that justice was served across space and time simultaneously. Artist Ben Lee created monuments to freedom on the former Zephyrian homeworld that existed as living art capable of inspiring hope in any being that looked upon them. His sculptures were made from crystallized consciousness that sang with the voices of every liberated slave. Dr. Eric Stone calculated that the mathematical foundations of reality were being rewritten by human consciousness interacting with the original gate builder technology. The universe itself was evolving to accommodate beings capable of manipulating fundamental forces through pure thought and will. Engineer Sam Martinez worked with the ancient gate builders to create new forms of dimensional travel that could transport entire civilizations to better realities. His technology was based on compassion rather than conquest, and it allowed species to find perfect worlds suited to their unique needs. Pilot Sarah Kim became the first human to successfully merge her consciousness with a gate network spanning an entire galaxy. She existed simultaneously in millions of locations and could provide transportation or communication to any being that needed help regardless of distance or dimensional barriers. Nurse Kate Adams established healing centers throughout the former Zephyrian Empire where beings could be cured not just of physical ailments, but of the psychological trauma caused by generations of slavery and oppression. Her medical practice transcended biology and worked directly with consciousness itself. Engineer Tony Walsh created new types of technology that existed only when needed and disappeared when the threat was over. His inventions were powered by intention rather than energy, and they automatically adapted to serve the needs of anyone who used them with pure motives. Farmer Joe Mitchell transformed barren Zephyrian worlds into gardens of paradise by accessing agricultural knowledge from infinite realities where every growing problem had been solved. His crops fed billions of liberated beings and turned former military bases into centers of abundance. The enslaved species throughout the Zephyrian Empire discovered their own unique relationships with consciousness as human awareness spread through the gate networks. Each race developed abilities suited to their nature and history while learning to transcend the limitations that had made their conquest possible. Research Prime. Kethlun was among the first Zephyrians to accept the new reality and ask for human guidance in developing his species' dormant consciousness abilities. He discovered that Zephyrians had suppressed their own evolution in favor of technological dominance and had forgotten their original potential. High Commander Vextar found himself face-to-face with Captain Jake Morrison on the bridge of the former Imperial flagship. The Zephyrian leader had lost everything but was still alive and unharmed because humans had chosen mercy over revenge. Jake Morrison looked at the defeated alien commander with compassion rather than anger. The humans had learned that consciousness was not a side effect of intelligence, but was actually the source from which intelligence emerged. This understanding made violence unnecessary because all beings were connected at the deepest level. Vextar asked the question that haunted every Zephyrian survivor. How had humans achieved the impossible and overcome an empire that had seemed invincible? Jake's response became legendary throughout the galaxy and was remembered for generations as the moment when a new age began. "You thought consciousness was just a side effect of intelligence," Jake said to the former Imperial commander. "We learned it was the other way around. Intelligence is what happens when consciousness focuses itself through physical matter, but consciousness itself is unlimited and eternal." The transformation of the galaxy continued as humans took their place not as rulers, but as teachers and guides. They helped other species discover their own unique ways of interacting with the fundamental forces of reality. The gates became bridges to infinite possibility rather than tools of oppression. Maria Gonzalez established the first interdimensional university where beings from any reality could come to learn about consciousness and its practical applications. Her school existed in the Forbidden Realm and could be accessed by anyone who had evolved beyond purely physical thinking. The original gate builders emerged from their self-imposed exile to welcome humanity as the first species to successfully make the transition from material to consciousness-based existence. They revealed that this evolution was the natural destiny of all intelligent life and that humans were just the beginning. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked with the ancient builders to develop new scientific principles based on consciousness rather than matter. Her research showed that reality was far more flexible than anyone had imagined, and that intelligent beings could literally think new universes into existence. Colonel Ryan Clark transformed his military forces into an interdimensional peacekeeping organization dedicated to helping newly evolved species defend themselves against any remaining threats. His reality squads became protectors of consciousness rather than warriors of destruction. The story ended with Earth becoming the center of a new galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Humans had discovered that their greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to imagine better realities and make those visions real through the power of awakened consciousness. The Zephyrian Empire became a cautionary tale told throughout the galaxy about the dangers of relying on technology without understanding the consciousness that created it. Meanwhile, humanity became legendary as the species that had transcended physical limitations through the power of pure thought and unlimited imagination. The awakening spread across Earth like wildfire as millions of humans discovered they could reshape reality through pure intention. Nurse Kate Adams no longer needed medical equipment to heal patients because she could visualize them healthy and make that vision real. Her hospital became a place where death itself seemed to have no power. Colonel Ryan Clark organized the first reality squads after realizing that conventional military tactics were obsolete. These units were trained to use human consciousness as a weapon against enemies who relied on technology and physical force. The soldiers learned to create pocket dimensions filled with their enemies' worst fears. Farmer Joe Mitchell discovered he could access the agricultural knowledge of infinite alternate Earths where humans had solved every farming problem. His crops grew in impossible conditions and fed thousands of people with harvests that defied every law of biology and chemistry. High Commander Vextar received increasingly desperate reports from across the Zephyrian Empire. Human consciousness was somehow reaching beyond Earth and affecting gate networks throughout Zephyrian space. The empire that had ruled 12-star systems for millennia was losing control of its most basic infrastructure. Dr. Eric Stone worked with engineer Sam Martinez to build the first human-controlled gate generator. They combined salvaged alien technology with human neural interface systems to create a device that responded directly to conscious intention. The prototype was crude, but it proved that humans could master gate technology. The first test of the human gate generator was conducted by volunteers, including former skeptic Judge Carol Wright and artist Ben Lee. Carol had spent her career believing only in facts and evidence, but now found herself opening doorways to impossible places through nothing but focused will. Ben Lee used his artistic imagination to create gates that led to worlds of pure beauty and wonder. His conscious mind painted realities where colors had emotions and music could be touched with human hands. The test exceeded every expectation and proved that humans could surpass their alien teachers. Research Prime Kethlun made a final report to High Commander Vextar that contained the most terrifying words in Zephyrian history. The humans were not just using gate technology, but were evolving it beyond anything the Empire had ever seen. They were creating new types of dimensional travel that Zephyrian science could not understand or control. Sergeant Rick Santos led his reality squad into battle when the Zephyrians attacked Detroit. Instead of fighting with guns and explosives, Rick's soldiers opened gates that led the alien forces into pocket dimensions where human nightmares became real. The invaders found themselves trapped in mazes of fear and confusion. The Zephyrian assault forces that entered Rick's nightmare dimensions faced horrors beyond their ability to comprehend. They encountered human memories of every war movie and horror story that had ever been imagined. The aliens who had terrorized dozens of species fled in panic from landscapes of pure human creativity. Dr. Lisa Hayes discovered that human abilities were still evolving and becoming stronger with each passing hour. The gate energy was not just awakening dormant potential, but was actually changing human consciousness at a fundamental level. Humanity was becoming something that had never existed before. Store clerk Ashley Ward transformed her workplace into an interdimensional marketplace where customers could buy items from any reality they could imagine. She helped people find perfect gifts by accessing parallel worlds where those objects already existed. Her small shop became a gateway to infinite possibility. Construction worker Greg Taylor began building structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. His buildings were stronger than steel, but lighter than air and could house thousands of people in spaces that appeared tiny from the outside. He worked by dreaming of perfect architecture and making those dreams real. High Commander Vextar made the decision to commit the entire Zephyrian fleet to a final assault on Earth. The Empire could not allow humanity to fully master gate technology, because that would mean the end of Zephyrian dominance throughout the galaxy. It was victory or extinction for both species. Captain Jake Morrison returned from his mission to the ancient gate network with knowledge that changed everything. He had learned that the original builders were still alive in the spaces between realities and that they had been waiting millions of years for another species capable of transcending physical existence. The space battle above Earth was unlike anything in recorded history. Zephyrian warships fired weapons that could destroy planets, but found their attacks redirected through human-controlled gates. Earth's defenders opened portals that sent alien missiles back at their own ships with perfect accuracy. Pilot Sarah Kim demonstrated the new human mastery of dimensional combat by flying her ship through gates that allowed her to attack from multiple directions simultaneously. She appeared behind enemy vessels and inside their shields, and even inside their hulls when necessary. Physics became her ally rather than her limitation. Engineer Tony Walsh used his understanding of gate technology to create weapons that existed only when needed and disappeared when the threat was over. His arsenal included energy beams that could cross any distance instantly and defensive shields that drew power from alternate realities. The Zephyrian Empire discovered that their slaves throughout the galaxy were also beginning to manifest strange abilities after being exposed to human consciousness through the gate network. Species that had been conquered and controlled for generations were suddenly remembering what freedom felt like. Retired veteran Frank Morris found himself leading battles that existed in the memories of wars that had never been fought. He commanded armies of human imagination against alien forces that relied only on technology and brute force. His strategies came from the collective military genius of infinite alternate humanities. Teacher Helen Blake created educational environments where her students could literally experience the subjects they were learning. History lessons became trips to the actual past, while science classes involved hands-on manipulation of fundamental forces. Knowledge became a living thing that students could touch and feel. Mechanic Paul Johnson repaired the battle damage to Earth's ships by visualizing them as perfect and undamaged. His workshop became a place where broken things healed themselves, and where new technologies spontaneously manifested based on pure need rather than engineering principles. The Zephyrian fleet found itself fighting an enemy that seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere at once. Human consciousness reached across vast distances to turn the Empire's own weapons against them. Gate networks that had been secure for millennia suddenly opened to admit human strike forces. High Commander Vextar watched his empire crumble as humans demonstrated abilities that made Zephyrian technology seem primitive by comparison. The species he had dismissed as merely another conquest target was systematically dismantling everything the Zephyrians had built over thousands of years. Dr. Eric Stone calculated that human consciousness was approaching a critical threshold where individual minds would merge into a collective intelligence spanning multiple dimensions. Humanity was evolving beyond the need for physical bodies and becoming something that existed primarily as pure thought and will. Artist Ben Lee created gateway murals that served as permanent portals between Earth and the liberated worlds throughout the galaxy. His art became a network of consciousness that connected every freed species and allowed them to share knowledge and experience across vast distances. Judge Carol Wright established the first interdimensional court system where justice could be served across multiple realities simultaneously. Her courtroom existed in several dimensions at once and could reach any place where fairness was needed, regardless of physical distance or technological barriers. As the battle raged above Earth, the outcome became clear to everyone involved. The Zephyrian Empire, built on technological supremacy, was being defeated by opponents who had transcended the need for technology altogether. Humanity had discovered that consciousness itself was the ultimate weapon and tool. Dr. Lisa Hayes stared at the quantum readings and felt her understanding of reality crumble. The data showed that human consciousness was not just compatible with gate technology, but was actually the key to unlocking its true potential. Every test revealed new impossibilities that challenged everything science thought it knew about the universe. Captain Jake Morrison led a desperate mission aboard the salvaged Zephyrian scout ship that his crew had renamed Hermes. Pilot Sarah Kim guided the small vessel through space, while engineer Tony Walsh worked to keep the alien systems running. Their destination was the primary gate network that the Zephyrians used to control their empire. The captured alien ship felt wrong to human senses. The corridors were too narrow, and the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Jake tried not to think about how many humans had died to capture this vessel, or how slim their chances were of returning home alive. Sarah. Kim had always been Earth's best pilot, but flying an alien ship was like learning to walk all over again. The controls responded to thoughts as much as touch, and she found herself accidentally activating systems by thinking about them too hard. Tony Walsh spent most of his time trying to prevent the ship from doing things that defied physics. Back on Earth, the effects of gate exposure continued to spread through the human population. Teacher Helen Blake was giving a history lesson when she suddenly projected vivid images of ancient Rome that her students could see and touch. The classroom transformed into the Roman Forum, complete with the sounds and smells of the ancient world. Mechanic Paul Johnson was working on a broken engine when he visualized it functioning perfectly. The machine not only repaired itself, but upgraded to technology that did not yet exist. Paul stared at the impossible engine and wondered if he was losing his mind, or if the world was becoming something entirely new. The Zephyrian Empire finally began to take the human anomalies seriously when their controlled gate to a barren moon suddenly opened to a thriving Earth where humanity had never existed. Research Prime Kethloon discovered that the human test subjects were somehow editing reality through the gates, using nothing but their memories and emotions. High Commander Vex Tar received reports of impossible events occurring throughout Zephyrian space. Human thoughts were apparently reaching across vast distances and affecting gate networks that should have been completely secure. The Empire's greatest technological advantage was becoming compromised by primitive alien minds, Jake Morrison and His team finally reached the primary gate network, and what they found changed everything they thought they knew about the Zephyrian Empire. The massive structure was clearly ancient beyond imagination and covered with symbols that no Zephyrian had ever created. Dr. Eric Stone worked frantically to decode the alien mathematics, while Sam Martinez tried to interface human technology with the gate controls. They discovered that the gates were not Zephyrian technology at all, but were built by a much older civilization that understood consciousness as a fundamental force of the universe. Sarah Kim felt the ancient station responding to her presence in ways that frightened and amazed her. The gate network seemed to recognize something in human consciousness that it had been waiting for across millions of years. She realized that the Zephyrians had been using tools they never truly understood. Tony Walsh discovered that the entire Zephyrian Empire was built on a lie. The aliens had found the gate network and learned to use it, but they had never mastered its true capabilities. They were like children playing with weapons they could barely comprehend, while humanity was the species the technology had been designed for. On Earth, Nurse Kate Adams was treating patients in a hospital when she began to visualize them as healthy and whole. The vision became reality as injuries healed themselves and diseases disappeared without explanation. Kate realized she was somehow reaching into alternate realities where her patients had never been hurt. Farmer Joe Mitchell was struggling with drought conditions when he accessed memories of fertile earths where rain fell exactly when crops needed it. His barren fields transformed into the lush farmland from his visions and produced harvests that should have been impossible given the weather conditions. Research Prime Kethlun made a terrifying discovery about human neural patterns. Unlike every other species the Zephyrians had encountered, humans did not just use the gates for transportation. They were rewriting the fundamental rules that governed dimensional space and creating new realities based on their thoughts and desires. Jake Morrison accessed the central database of the gate network and learned the true history of the ancient builders. They had been a species of pure consciousness that had transcended physical limitations millions of years ago. The gates were their gift to younger races, who might one day evolve beyond material existence. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered dozens of species by controlling access to dimensional travel, but they had never understood that the gates were meant to be controlled by consciousness itself. They were biological creatures using technology designed for beings of pure thought and will. Dr. Lisa Hayes received the data transmission from Jake's mission and immediately understood the implications. Humanity was not just another primitive species, but was actually the first race since the ancient builders to naturally interface with consciousness-based technology. The gates recognized humans as their intended users. Sarah Kim began experimenting with direct neural control of the gate network and discovered she could open portals to anywhere she could imagine. The ancient station responded to her thoughts like a living extension of her own mind, and she felt a connection to something vast and eternal. The effects on Earth became impossible to ignore as ordinary people began demonstrating abilities that defied every law of physics. Store clerk Ashley Ward helped customers by visualizing the perfect products for their needs and watching those items manifest from thin air in her shop. Construction worker Greg Taylor built structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously and were stronger than any material known to human science. He worked by imagining what needed to be built and letting his consciousness guide the tools to create impossible architectures. High Commander Vextar finally admitted that the Zephyrian Empire faced something unprecedented. The humans were not just resisting conquest, but were actually taking control of the technology that formed the foundation of Zephyrian power. The Empire's advantage was disappearing with each passing hour. Retired veteran Frank Morris found himself accessing memories of wars that had never happened and strategies that belonged to generals who had never existed. His knowledge expanded beyond anything one human mind should have been able to contain as he drew wisdom from infinite alternate histories. Tony Walsh made the final connection that explained everything. The ancient gate builders had not disappeared, but had evolved into beings of pure consciousness that existed in the spaces between realities. They had been waiting for another species capable of making the same evolutionary leap. Jake Morrison realized that the Zephyrian invasion was not Earth's greatest threat, but was actually the catalyst that would transform humanity into something magnificent and terrible. The aliens had awakened abilities that humans never knew they possessed, and there was no going back to the way things were before. As the third day of Earth's deadline approached, the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift in ways that no one could have predicted. The Zephyrian Empire, built on technological supremacy, faced opponents who were rewriting the very nature of technology itself through the power of consciousness unleashed. Research Prime Kethlin examined the human specimens with cold scientific interest. The Zephyrian had overseen the conquest of dozens of species, and humans appeared no different from any other primitive race. Their biology was standard carbon-based life, and their technology was laughably simple compared to the Empire's advanced systems. Lieutenant Amy Foster tried not to show fear as the alien scientists attached strange devices to her head. She had been captured during a failed rescue mission and now found herself in what looked like a laboratory from a nightmare. The walls were covered with screens showing brain patterns and energy readings that meant nothing to her. Sergeant Dan Cooper was strapped to a table next to Amy, and he gave her a brave smile despite their terrible situation. Dan had always been the strongest person Amy knew, and seeing him try to stay positive helped her keep her own courage. They both knew that whatever the aliens planned to do to them would probably be very unpleasant. Kethlin activated the consciousness scanner and began probing the human minds. The device was designed to map neural pathways and identify the best methods for mental control. Every species had different weaknesses, and the Zephyrians had perfected the art of finding them quickly and efficiently. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Hayes worked around the clock trying to understand the alien gate technology. She had assembled a team of the brightest scientists on the planet, including mathematician Dr. Eric Stone and engineer Sam Martinez. Together, they were analyzing every piece of data from the alien demonstration. The quantum readings made no sense, according to human physics. Lisa discovered that the gates were not just moving matter through space, but were somehow transporting consciousness itself across dimensional barriers. The implications were staggering and suggested that reality was far more flexible than anyone had imagined. On the Zephyrian ship, Kethlin prepared to expose the human subjects to controlled gate energy. This was standard procedure for breaking the will of new species. The dimensional exposure usually caused madness or complete mental shutdown, which made subjects much easier to control and reprogram. Amy felt a strange tingling sensation as energy flowed through the alien device attached to her head. Instead of pain or fear, she suddenly experienced the most vivid memory of her childhood home. But this was not just remembering. She could smell her mother's cooking and feel the warm summer breeze and hear her father calling her name. The memory was so real that it began to manifest in the testing chamber. Kethlin watched in shock as human furniture appeared out of nowhere. and the sterile alien walls became covered with earth flowers. This had never happened before, and the Zephyrian scientist frantically checked his equipment for malfunctions. Dan Cooper experienced his own impossible memory at the same time. He was back in basic training, running through obstacle courses with his squad. The alien laboratory filled with the sounds of human voices and military equipment that should not exist. Kethlin stumbled backwards as phantom soldiers marched through his carefully controlled environment. Dr. Eric Stone made a breakthrough discovery while analyzing the quantum data. He realized that human consciousness operated on the same frequency as the Nexus gates themselves. This meant that humans were not just affected by gate energy, but could potentially influence and control it in ways other species could not. Sam Martinez confirmed Eric's findings with his engineering analysis. The gate technology was incredibly ancient and far more sophisticated than the Zephyrians realized. The aliens were using tools they did not fully understand, and humans seemed to have a natural compatibility with the original design principles. Hi. Commander Vextar received the first reports of anomalies in the testing chambers with typical arrogance. The commander had conquered 47 species using identical methods and refused to believe that humans could be fundamentally different from any other primitive race. Kethlin tried to continue the experiments, but the results became more disturbing with each test. Every human subject began projecting memories and experiences that became temporarily real in physical space. The laboratory equipment started malfunctioning as human thoughts interfered with Zephyrian technology. Amy discovered she could influence what appeared around her by focusing on specific memories. When she thought about her college dormitory, the alien walls transformed to match her recollections perfectly. She realized that somehow her mind was editing reality itself through the gate energy. Colonel Ryan Clark noticed similar effects among Earth's military personnel. Soldiers who had been near the alien demonstration reported shared visions of battles that had never happened and places that did not exist. The phenomenon was spreading and becoming stronger with each passing hour. Captain Jake Morrison flew to the research facility where Dr. Hayes was working. Jake needed to understand what was happening to his people before Earth's deadline expired. Lisa explained her theory that humans had an unprecedented ability to interact with dimensional technology. The implications were staggering. If humans could control the gates, then the Zephyrian Empire's greatest weapon might become humanity's greatest asset. But first, they needed to understand exactly how human consciousness interfaced with the ancient technology. Dan Cooper began, experimenting with his newfound abilities while still trapped in the alien laboratory. He discovered that strong emotions made the effect more powerful, and that he could share his projected memories with Amy. Together, they created a small pocket of Earth reality inside the Zephyrian ship. Kethlin reported the impossible results to High Commander Vextar, but the Empire's leader dismissed the findings as equipment failures. The Zephyrian Empire had built its power on the assumption that they alone could master gate technology, and admitting otherwise would threaten everything they believed. Sam Martinez worked with Lisa to build a prototype device that might allow humans to access gate energy safely. They used salvaged alien components combined with human neural interface technology. The first tests were promising but also dangerous as human volunteers experienced overwhelming sensory input. Back on the Zephyrian ship, Amy and Dan realized they could do more than just project memories. They began to actively reshape their prison cell by visualizing it as something completely different. The alien walls became earth concrete and the energy barriers transformed into ordinary doors. Kethlin watched his secure facility become compromised. by human thoughts and finally admitted that something unprecedented was occurring. The research prime began studying human neural patterns more carefully and discovered that their brains processed quantum information in ways that should have been impossible for biological organisms. Dr. Eric Stone calculated that if humans could fully access their dimensional abilities, they might be able to rewrite the fundamental rules governing space and time itself. The mathematics suggested that human consciousness was naturally designed to interface with the deepest levels of reality. Jake Morrison received word that the alien experiments were having unexpected results. Instead of breaking human subjects, the tests were actually making them stronger and more capable of resisting Zephyrian control. This gave him hope that Earth might have options nobody had previously considered. As the second day of Earth's deadline passed, the strange effects continued to spread among the human population. People around the world reported dreams and visions that felt more real than waking life. Something was awakening in humanity, and even the humans themselves did not yet understand what it meant. Amy Foster looked at Dan Cooper through the transformed alien laboratory and smiled for the first time since their capture. They were still prisoners, but they were no longer helpless. Whatever was happening to them was also happening to humans everywhere, and the Zephyrian Empire had no idea what they had unleashed. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Liberty and watched the massive alien vessel appear in the sky above New York City. The ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built, and it cast a shadow that covered half of Manhattan. Jake had been in space battles before, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien ship looked like a giant crystal cathedral floating in space. It was white and silver, and it seemed to glow with its own light. Strange. Symbols covered its surface, and they pulsed with colors that hurt to look at directly. Jake counted at least 50 smaller ships surrounding the main vessel, like protective sharks. Dr. Lisa Hayes rushed onto the bridge carrying her quantum scanner. She was the smartest person Jake knew, and if anyone could figure out what these aliens wanted, it would be her. Lisa had been tracking strange energy readings for weeks, but nobody had believed her when she said something big was coming. The communication console crackled to life and a voice spoke in perfect English. The voice was deep and cold, and it made everyone on the bridge shiver. Jake had expected alien voices to sound weird, but this one sounded almost human, except for the way it made the words feel heavy and wrong. "We are the Zephyrian Empire, and we speak for High Commander Vextar, the ruler of 12 star systems and master of the Nexus Gates. Your species will now submit to our authority or face complete destruction. You have 3 of your days to decide." Jake grabbed the microphone with hands that shook only a little. He had trained for this moment his whole career, but it still felt like a dream. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We represent the people of Earth, and we demand to know why you have come to our world." The alien voice laughed, and the sound made several crew members step backwards. "Your demands mean nothing, primitive creature. We have conquered 47 species, and none have ever successfully resisted us. You will serve the Empire, or you will die like all the others who chose poorly." Colonel Ryan Clark burst through the bridge doors at that moment. Ryan was in charge of all ground forces on Earth, and Jake had never seen him look so worried. Ryan whispered that their weapons had no effect on the alien ships and that conventional military tactics would be useless against this enemy. Lisa suddenly grabbed Jake's arm and pointed at her scanner. The readings were going crazy, and she said she was detecting massive energy buildups inside the alien ship. Something big was about to happen, and Jake ordered all Earth ships to fall back to a safe distance. A bright light appeared in front of the alien mothership, and it began to grow larger and larger. The light formed a perfect circle in the air, and Jake could see through it like looking through a window. But the window did not show space or stars. Instead, it showed Earth, but an Earth that was dead and burned and covered in the bones of billions of people. Behold the fate of those who resist the Zephyrian Empire. This is your world in another reality where your species chose unwisely. The Nexus gates show us all possible futures, and we control which one becomes real. Jake stared at the horrible vision of dead Earth and felt his stomach turn. He could see the ruins of cities he knew and loved. The Statue of Liberty was broken in half, and the White House was nothing but ash and rubble. Millions of human skeletons covered the ground as far as the eye could see. Lisa was frantically taking readings of the gate and muttering about quantum signatures that should not exist. She said the physics were all wrong, and that whatever the aliens were doing should be impossible according to everything humans knew about science. The gate suddenly closed, and the terrible vision disappeared. Jake felt like he could breathe again, but the image of dead Earth was burned into his memory forever. He looked around the bridge and saw that every crew member looked as shocked and scared as he felt. "Your time begins now," said the alien voice. 3 days to surrender, or we will make that reality your reality. Do not test our patience, primitive ones." The communication channel went dead, and the alien ships moved into position around Earth. They did not attack, but they made it clear that escape was impossible. Jake ordered all Earth forces to maintain defensive positions and avoid any aggressive actions that might trigger an early attack. Dr. Lisa Hayes stayed on the bridge running scan after scan of the alien technology. She told Jake that the energy readings from the gate were unlike anything in human science. The aliens seemed to have mastered some form of dimensional travel that allowed them to move between different versions of reality itself. Colonel Ryan. Clark reported that every military base on Earth was scrambling to find weapons that might work against the alien shields. So far, nothing had even scratched their defenses. Earth's most powerful nuclear weapons had bounced off the alien hulls like raindrops hitting a mountain. Jake found himself thinking about his daughter Amy, who was serving as a lieutenant on a research station near Mars. He wondered if she was safe and if he would ever see her again. The thought of Earth becoming like that dead world in the gate made him feel sick with fear and anger. As night fell, Jake noticed something strange happening to his crew. Several officers reported having vivid dreams about other worlds and different versions of Earth. Ensign Dan Cooper said he kept seeing flashes of places that felt real but could not possibly exist. The ship's doctor said these might be stress reactions, but Lisa thought something else was happening. Lisa discovered that every human who had been near the alien demonstration was experiencing similar effects. People were reporting shared visions and dreams that felt more real than reality itself. She theorized that exposure to gate energy was somehow affecting human consciousness in ways the aliens had not expected. Jake spent the long night staring out at the alien ships and wondering what choice Earth could possibly make. Surrender meant slavery for all humanity, but resistance seemed to mean certain death. He thought about all the people counting on him to find a solution that might not exist. The next morning brought reports from around the world. Every major government was debating the same impossible choice. Some wanted to fight regardless of the odds, while others argued that survival as slaves was better than extinction. Jake knew that whatever decision Earth made would change everything forever. As Jake prepared for another day of the countdown to humanity's deadline, he had no idea that the strange dreams affecting his crew were the beginning of something the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered before, something that would change not just Earth's fate, but the balance of power in the entire galaxy.